Okay.
Let's see. Okay, we're streaming. And we'll just wait a minute or two and
I'm gonna just switch it over to the side of the computer.
looks good. Let me see if anybody's joining yet. Let's give it like one more minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Learning how to do YouTube Live. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I see a lot of hellos in the chat. All right, everybody. So this is going to be the FinTech speaker series. And we have Valeria here, who is going to talk a little bit about herself, FinTech in general, some problems. But Valeria, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Maka. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Valeria Alvarez, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about the FinTech industry, an industry that I've been very passionate about the last couple of years. And now that I am looking to start building a project of my own. So, oops, and I went all the way down. So let's see. Wait, what's going on here? Sorry. I don't know why it's... Okay. That's quick. So just kind of to talk a little bit about the agenda, I'm going to give a summary myself. I'll talk on the FinTech industry as a whole. Then we'll talk about the problem that we currently see in the FinTech industry. There's a lot because it is an ongoing, new and upcoming sort of industry. What the solution is, something that I have been working for a little while now. Why it is the right moment, and then I'll go ahead and I'll take some questions. So about me, I currently live in Miami, Florida. I've been here for the last 15 years. Before that, I actually lived in New York City for a little while. I am an immigrant. I was born and raised in Colombia. So I came to the US with my parents, very young age. And I basically had, everywhere from elementary to middle school, high school, and I did my college over here. My parents went back home. I stayed. I saw the future. I wanted to stay kind of here in America. And I have a degree in international business and marketing, where I have been working primarily in sales, international sales for different tech companies for the last 7 years. So to talk a little bit about what I do for work is I've worked with various companies, whether they are public companies, private companies, NGOs, and I do a lot of business development for them. Because of my background in international business, I primarily focus in on getting to know a product and selling it internationally. And so I've been very lucky to just meet people from all walks of life, people who have all sorts of different needs, and just really getting to the core problem that they're currently trying to solve and see if the product that I'm working with at that particular moment really fits what their need is. aside from work and what I have been doing in the last, almost decade of my life, is I really love to build community. So as you can see here in this photo, I host TEDx events. So this is one TEDx event that I hosted here in Miami, and this was for women who are creators and entrepreneurs and are doing something really amazing in our city. I also love sustainability. So I have a small business of my own that I've actually created for the last 3 years, which we focus on sustainability and food waste. But I'm also really interested in equity, and it's going to be kind of a full circle of how that goes. But basically, equity is just how can we make sure that everybody gets the same seat at the table that everybody currently has, and has the same resources in order to achieve what I believe is, financial freedom, financial literacy. And that's what we're going to get into the topic of today. So I want to go ahead and I'll talk a little bit about FinTech and kind of what the problem lies. So FinTech, just to give a summary for those that don't know, FinTech really just uses a combination of the words financial and technology, and it refers to ways of making financial processes and traditional financial services more accessible using software. And the FinTech industry is transforming the way financial institutions operate. To look at how important it is, I basically wrote some of the challenges of how finances worked in the past. And, organizations as a whole, still to this day, really need to respond to the changes that are going on in the world and need to redesign themselves to be successful. And the models of the past were structured around linear, heavily manual processes. They also gave more room for mistakes and errors, and overall transactions were very lengthy overall. Whereas now the models of modern technology, on the other hand, demand us to be more networked, automated, and are using real-time data in order for us to have these faster results. They are cost-effective, they're higher security, there's bigger speed and convenience, and there's a lot of transparency, perhaps something that didn't really exist in the past. If I go to how FinTech is transforming everyday life, I like to break it down into 3 different tiers, right? One is the economic equity and access, 2 is currency, and 3 is investment advice. So providing financial services to everyone, or at least dramatically extending their reach, is among the chief promises of financial technology, right? And what we see is that economic equity centers around fairness. And this is to the first point, right? Making sure that people's beliefs around what is right or wrong determine how this goal is achieved. So for new FinTech companies, it's all about creating opportunity for those to whom it has traditionally been unavailable in the past. And this is the focus for many new entrepreneurs, including myself. From an entrepreneur perspective, is how to create a type of financial transaction that will allow people to access it freely and easily. It's important to note that equality means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities, whereas equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So this is a picture that I really like to kind of see that difference. The second is currency, right? And what we see in currency is that financial technology might turn the very concept of money itself into something that's completely unrecognizable, that up to this point, we're only starting to get to know. And some experts really predict that cash will one day become obsolete, and currencies such as the dollar or the pound could see some really serious competition from digital platforms. And this is all really thanks to blockchain technology. And as a lot of you may know, blockchain technology really just allows for the reliable use of cryptocurrencies, which you might have heard of, which will also create spaces for decentralized electronic exchange of value. One popular that really exists is Bitcoin, right? Which is an open source technology that operates peer to peer, with no central authority or bank. And as the landscape online continues to occur, so do the ways products are being purchased, right? And right now, there is a growing number of retailers who are accepting Bitcoin or are accepting other cryptocurrencies. And investors are really looking into how these will shape the future. So currency is something that is inevitable, that this is going to keep growing in the financial industry. The third, and this is kind of where my head really goes towards, is investing advice. And this is really important because providing financial services to everyone, like I mentioned earlier, is really one of the biggest promises that FinTech has. And financial advice is usually a word that's kept for the top 1%, right? Financial advisors are expensive. Only CEOs, only C-level executives kind of have access to financial advice, because on top of your paycheck, you're also paying out of your own money for someone to tell you what to do with your wealth. But in the last 2 decades, new technologies have democratized investing by giving rise to robo-advisors, which use computer programs that provide algorithm-based automated investment guidance. So on my day-to-day right now, I actually work for a company named Northstar. And this company uses proprietary algorithms along with real-life financial advisors that help people achieve their financial goals. So it's actually really great because it serves as an employee benefit. So it's not something that you have to pay out of pocket. It's something that if you are an employee of X and Y company, you can actually talk to a financial advisor, and then they will give you advice based on what your current goals are. And this is, this was great about financial technology, is that it really could be accessible to everyone, right? But why doesn't everybody have it? And why is financial literacy, just even to begin with, something that it's so hard to come by? So that's basically where the problem arises. And I really like to talk a little bit about my personal story, because as a first generation immigrant, I came to this country with, no money. My parents had no money. We had no savings. We didn't really understand how life worked in America. And as I got older, I was accepted into college. I didn't understand how college debt worked. I didn't really understand how credit worked. I didn't really understand just, what student loans meant or what it meant to have no savings. And it really just comes down to education. And to this day, there is not enough educational financial understanding platforms out there in the market. And so because I am a woman, I am Latina, and I am underrepresented, I really started digging deep as to how the lack of financial literacy really affects us. And as you can see, and I'm sure many of you have seen this, is the lack, is that wage gap, right? Is for every dollar that a white man makes, a Latina is making 54 cents. Black woman is only making 63 cents. A white woman is only making 80 cents of the dollar. So it really is not fair. And that equity is not just where we want it to be. So what I have also seen is, at least in the last 2 years, COVID-19, right? The pandemic affected women's finances is really hard. Women need more than 9 straight months of job gains just to recover the 4.8 million net jobs lost in the last 2 years. And this really affects their bottom line, and it affects their career because, they can't advance. They either are parents and they have to stay back. They have aging parents. They have household management chores that they have to do, or they have to dig into career planning. So what do we see here, and how can we move forward? And is, history has created systems that funnel women, especially women of color, into lower paying occupations, undervalue that work that women do, and penalize women for having children, right? And it has been extremely magnified in the last 2 years due to the pandemic. And it's a very structural problem. And the expectations that women are the primary caregivers in their family is a perception that persists despite the fact that women make 47% of the labor force, right? And it really forces women to sacrifice their careers for the sake of their family. So what I what I have been thinking about and what I've been really working on is how can we actually make this accessible, and how does someone get started with investment, and how does someone before they did the same things that I did, which was getting to a ton of debt, have a ton of credit card debt as well, and then not understanding anything that had to do with financial literacy, how can we actually go from the start, or at least have women at least be able to gain this perspective in the future. And this is just kind of some articles that I kind of put together, is that home ownership among women, for example, is increasing, but they're still being extremely underrepresented. If you're a female employee, you're looking at being money one of your, if not the biggest stressor of your life. Still to this day, the majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Less than 50% of women have $1,000 in the emergency savings. Only 40% are comfortable with selecting investments that are right for them. And at the same time, female employees are likely to have financial advisors to express comfort and receive financial advice at work. So what we're looking at is kind of what the solution is, and this is not a straight answer, but I really do believe that a platform like this is necessary, especially now, especially in a place where the only difference between someone making $10,000 a year and $1 million a year just comes down to financial education. And technology is the perfect way to democratize education. And so what we're looking for is what my platform is called. It's called Todas. And I've been so grateful and so lucky that Maka and her team have really helped me with the whole design of this. And we're basically breaking it into 4 different categories, which is education, right? Allowing women to come in, or underrepresented women come in and just really use the platform to learn everything from investing, from stock options, from equity, to paying down student debt, to loan management, to budgeting, anything that they have in their minds. This is something that would really help them. Inclusivity, right? A lot of people, especially women, don't go into industries because they actually think that they don't belong, or that this is not for them, or that investing or buying a home or having all these things accessible to them is not something that they should be worthy of. But in reality, obviously everybody is, and we should totally be seeking these things. We should be seeking not necessarily generational wealth, but we should be definitely seeking a point that we feel financially comfortable where we are. And so we definitely want to have an inclusive platform. Second one is having that goals-based approach. So really digging into what that action piece is, after you kind of create that awareness of what you need to be doing, how can you actually drive actions in order to achieve those results? And then high engagement. And so we're really trying to use is technology in order to keep women engaged, and doing so by, design, creating a beautiful platform, creating something that people want to come in. We're looking into gamification. So perhaps using some sort of games in order for people to kind of keep engaged on the platform. And we really do think that by creating something that is accessible, that is inclusive, that it's beautiful, that it can allow for women to come in and learn on their own terms, the same way that they are learning other things on the end, then that would really help with a lot of their main problems. I remember when I first started thinking about the idea of how actually can help women go from point A to point B, I really started thinking about the care economy. And I was like, perhaps we should be, focusing on how to get women a driver for their kids to go into school. That way they save their times at home. And after kind of going through this whole search, I've really narrowed it that it's not so much a household management problem, but it is a money issue. Is how can we actually help these women understand where they are economically right now in order for them to actually be able to meet their goals, or even have more income come in and be able to manage that. So how can we actually give women that seat at the table that they've been really longing? Lastly, I think that's it. I think I'm 10 minutes early, but I'll head it over to you, Maka.
Yeah, no, this is great. Lots of comments here. This resonates so much. This is literally my life. Agreed. I feel so seen. Just so I think this is resonating definitely with the people viewing here. I'll see if there's any questions. So if you all have any questions, drop them in the chat here, and we'll get those to Valeria. What's interesting is, as we get questions, is so one of the prompts for this design-a-thon that we're doing this week around FinTech is really about improving financial literacy, right? Like, how can we help improve financial literacy? So I think for folks seeing kind of what you're working on is essentially a solution, right? Like, it's one way that we can improve that, but definitely not limited to that. I think there's like so many little things we can do here and there to improve financial literacy as a whole. And let's see. Someone's asking if your platform is already created, if they can access it.
Not yet. So,
Not yet.
Yeah. So we're working on kind of the back end of how the platform is going to be. And we're really looking into seeing how retention is going to take place. I come from a background of customer experience. So I work with a large company called Zendesk that we used to do customer experience software. And we see that FinTech companies, especially in order to keep retention, really need to have an amazing customer experience. And that entails whether they have a live chat or they have people who are guiding them through the platform, or how could we keep that retention really top of mind in order for people to kind of stay on the platform. And so what we're working on is what sort of technology we're going to put it on. If it's going to stay as a Web 2, or we're going to transition it over to Web 3, make it into a gamification. And, the more that you learn, the more that you earn is kind of where I'm going towards. So that's coming in the next, 2 or 3 months. And hopefully, we'll launch sooner than later.
Yeah, so I think there were some questions here around Web3/crypto and FinTech and key differences. So I don't know if that's a question for you, but I think you just touched on like trying to decide if this stays in Web 2 or Web 3, and maybe even some like financial literacy around Web 3. Earlier today, we had a speaker who was just, saying all these keywords to everybody, and everybody was very confused. And I think that's almost like the next step, right? Like, how do you get people up to speed with what's coming or what's already here that a lot of people don't understand?
Absolutely. And I think part of me is creating this platform because of that need, that when I speak, because I'm in the space, it makes it easier for me to sometimes understand it. Although, like, for example, I myself am taking a course on Web3 because I still think that this is just a very niche and very new sort of platform that has, like, a lot of people don't know about, including myself. Like, there's a lot going on and it's changing every single day, that Todas is going to be that platform where when you don't know what Web3 is, you can actually log in and you can take a course, and then, it might help you just to at least have those keywords available to you. I would say that when someone tells you that they know what Web3 completely entails, they're lying to you, because it's completely ever changing, and what they mention might not be true. So that's something that I want to make sure that I have at least complete knowledge of what's available so far before I implement this to something else. But at least these courses are going to be they're going to be updated frequently. So as new information kind of comes in, you'll be able to learn more.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. We had somebody here asking if Todas is a website you're working on. So I think we just answered that, right? Like, you're working on the website and the platform. Our students actually in the Career Jumpstart program are kind of helping you, right, with the style guide and website for that. There's a question here about accountability. So in your opinion, do people make better financial choices when they're held accountable to a certain degree? So from your research, have you encountered anything around accountability?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it does, kind of to what I was mentioning earlier, that it comes down to being aware of where you are financially right now. Having, and this is something that I actually learned at North Star, is how can you really work on the 3 A's around your financial wellness, and one of them being awareness, right? And then one of them is receiving advice, and one of them is taking action. So those 3 A's are extremely important. Is how can I be aware of what's happening? How can I see how that's affecting my bottom line? Because as I mentioned, money is everybody's number one source of stress, believe it or not. And this is something that there's tons of information public about. And it really just kind of you realizing and being aware of what the source is of where you're coming from, and knowing that most likely it does have to deal with money issues. And so how can we actually create that awareness piece in order for them to us give advice, or at least us teach you what you can do with it and have your options. Accountability does come down to you, but that is the action piece that you yourself need to take. Because if you really are trying to go from point A to point B in your life, you need to start with that awareness piece. You have to realize where you are, how that's affecting all the other sources of your life, go back to that core, and then be able to take action in order to change it, right? I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. There's a lot of really great questions, so I'm just going to keep shooting them at you.
Yeah.
I know we have still a couple of minutes here, but from the things you've shared, where is the biggest pain point for folks? Where do they know the least about? Is it the tools and resources? Is it the skills? Like, where do you see like the biggest gap out of everything that you shared?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime, and I've built, I built a company in the past, is it does come to, it does have that branding awareness. So it's even knowing that it's accessible to even have. I think, allowing people to understand that a lot of people, kind of to what my point was earlier, is that people tend to not join because they fear that they don't belong, right? And people don't necessarily think that they are capable to go and meet these goals because they don't think that that's built for them. So I think my biggest pain point is how can I actually make it inclusive for folks to not feel intimidated to actually use a platform that it can be served at any sort of level. And the way that I see it is kind of learning a language. And I've been really looking into how, for example, a company like Duolingo has been designed, where you have the easy, then and intermediate, and the advanced courses. So you going into it, you don't feel intimidated that you don't off the bat know how to speak fluent Portuguese, right? You go off being like, I know one word or two. I might know what Web3 is at a really high level, but I'm still in that easy level. Like, how can we make that sort of entry just extremely easy for you to actually go through, and then at least cross that line. And once you cross that line, then you're already going to be able to understand and see where you are, and then be able to kind of process from there. But I would say that that's the biggest difficulty right now, is just making people feel included, right? And I think that that's kind of what goes to the name, is like, there is room for everybody. There's room for todas. And there's just like, people should be feeling like they belong, and to have a conversation, to be able to have the same thing and the same goals as others have had in the past.
Right. Yeah. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, todas means everybody. And there's a question here that says, I'm interested in knowing, who do you identify as underrepresented women? I am not Latinx, but you literally defined my life.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I identify myself as Latina because that's just who I am. I think it's just anybody who, again, doesn't think that they belong. And I think anybody who's underrepresented, it's someone who needs a hand in order to achieve a goal. It's somebody who necessarily doesn't need to be from a specific place or country, but I'm just showing the stats of how it affects Latina women, not necessarily saying that this platform isn't for everybody, because anybody can use it, right? Anybody who just wants to learn, anybody who, whether they identify as male or female, can join the platform. But I just based it off the kind of what the stats are, and, portrayed it towards the Latino community, but understanding that it does affect absolutely everyone at any sort of level. And so I would say that this platform really is for everybody.
Yeah. There's a question here that says, any tips for gamification? I think you talked about kind of the difficulty levels, right? And like Duolingo and how they use that in terms of gamification, but do you have any other ideas in how you're going to gamify the application? Or is that really it, that what you're thinking?
I would really love it. I love games myself. I think that that's how I really do stay engaged in a lot of things. I think what's great about the Web3 world is the idea of tokenizing the internet and being able to win rewards of it. So I do see it as like being a platform that incentivizes you to finish something and get a reward from, right? That is still obviously something that is a work in progress, but hopefully, if you have any tips, if anybody wants to brainstorm about how this can happen, please feel free to shoot me an email. I wrote my personal email right here. Yeah, but that's still something that I'm working on.
Awesome. There's a question here about age. Do you think financial literacy should start at a younger age, going to college and being hit with all these student loans and not really understanding money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can only speak for Florida, but I think Florida is one of the first states or the largest states right now that is requiring financial literacy to be taught. And I think it's a high school level, which I even think that financial literacy should start as young as, being in elementary, just kind of understand, like teaching our children the idea of what money is, kind of what that looks like, kind of how that affects us. I think we grow up thinking that money is just like this imaginary tool that our parents have endlessly in their pockets, but it's just, it's not like that. And I think for me personally, I always thought it was that. And it came to me being just a tad bit older where I would ask my parents for money and they would be like, sorry, no, we can't afford that. Or why were we moving from apartment to apartment in a very young age? And it was because the rent was really high. So that I think I had to learn the hard way. And it's something that my parents did teach me, but I think as long as, I think it should be taught earlier, and the earlier that you teach, it really helps adults or kids grow up to become adults that are just very aware. And I mean, there's some great books, like I think it's called Rich Dad Poor Dad, being one of them, that talks about the idea of how a parent who is financially stable teaches their kids to kind of go through life versus a parent that doesn't. And unfortunately, the parent that doesn't might have not had the opportunity to learn. And it's like, how can we even teach that parent to just learn about financial literacy now? So it's never too late, but I don't think it's ever too early to start either.
Yeah, on that, it's kind of like you can read the questions that are coming here. I think that's a good segue to, there's some questions here about kind of like the older generation of folks that don't know how to operate apps or prefer to keep their savings in cash. Have you thought about helping them, or is your solution mainly geared towards, folks that are more technical? Like, have you thought about that kind of group?
Absolutely. So again, from my personal experience, and I think honestly, building a company or having an idea to build a company really has to be built around what your own personal experience is. And so I can only really speak from my experience, but I have aging parents who live in a third world country, who don't speak English, who are very intimidated about financial literacy, who to this day, are not financially stable. And so having sort of aging parents is definitely part of that forefront of what I want this to be. I want it to be something that is accessible to people who don't really know how to use technology very well. People who might not have the resources otherwise to than just an iPhone to really, or a smartphone to really go through these sort of courses. I do think that it's not targeted for just technical. I think it is targeted for, which is why, I think what's so great about financial technology that is we're allowing to democratize the stigma that it's only accessible to the really wealthy. And so it really should be a platform that anybody and everybody can use. And it goes back to kind of what we're talking about, the different levels, is if you are an aging parent or you're in your legitimate whatever age, you should be able to go on and learn that yourself. And that's something that we're working kind of in the front end, is like on the onboarding process. It's like, where do you rely right now? How do you feel about your finances? What is your age group? Where do you identify? Where do you live? All these things really affect who we are and how we manage our money. So that's something that's being taken into consideration. Obviously, it's not going to go out in the first or second phase, but this is something that is definitely going to kind of define how we build the software.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Are there any apps or websites you feel have made an impact or have been useful at improving financial literacy? Like off the top of your head, are there existing resources that folks can share or look into?
There are a couple. I mean, I personally use this one investment app. It's called Elvest. That I like. That's only here in North America. I don't know if we have international students kind of viewing this, but there's a ton of different places. There's one called SavvyLadies.org, which is an organization in New York City where you can actually pick up your phone and talk to a financial advisor. There is a website that I can't remember the name of it right now, but also YouTube for me has been extremely helpful. But it's like, how can we actually bring all those sorts of funnels and all those channels into one place is what I'm trying to do here, where people can really have one source of truth. But there are a lot of things out there in the market that are free. You just have to do the work and find them.
Yeah. Awesome. There's a lot of questions here in the channel that are specific to the design-a-thon. So if you're asking if specific topic works or not, drop that in the Slack channel so that Sadi can answer those. And let's leave this chat for questions with Valeria here. There's just some people echoing kind of the stuff you're saying about the importance of financial literacy for children and how they learned it in their middle school years, and it was very helpful. And then maybe there's one, we'll wrap up with this question here. I know crypto is a hot topic, but are there financial literacy basics that you're looking to focus on in your platform? So aside from crypto, Web3 type of, that FinTech space, are there basics that you want to cover as well? Or are you going to focus more on like the future, right, of financial world?
No, it's a great question. The answer is no. I think just the basics is just as important as what's happening now and what's going into the future. I don't think if you learn step 1, you're never gonna be able to learn step 10. And getting to the basics of it is just as important. So understanding even what currency is from the very start is important, and how that works and how that impacts international markets, how that impacts us as a personal level, the psychology behind it, all of that stuff, I think is an extremely important stepping stone before you even understand what crypto or Web3 or any of these crazy words that are ever changing sound like. So I would say that it's not just for the future, but just understanding where you are. And I think what's great about us is that we really want to help you at a personal level. So is what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve, learning financial literacy around crypto and currencies that are in the digital space, great. Then that's what you should focus on. But if your kind of point of view is, hey, no, I want to just start a family and I want to build my own house and I want to have savings, then that's fantastic. Like, let's create a budget sheet. This is how much you make right now. This is what you take home every other week. Let's see what your current spends are, what your bills are, and then see whatever's left and see how you can actually achieve those goals. So there's just really no, there's no specific track. I think it's just, let's start with the basics. And then if you do have that sort of mindset of going a little bit farther, which you can as you go, then feel free.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. Where can these folks find you? I know you have your website on here and your email, but if they want to maybe, I don't know, stay informed about DOLAS and the launch, should they email you? Like, what's the best way for them to
Absolutely. So yeah, you can go ahead and email me. I also, in my website, you can't click it yet, but the website will be linked there soon. But if you really want to stay in touch and if you want to just brainstorm any ideas that you may have for the platform, I'd love just to kind of go back and forth with people. So feel free to shoot me a message through email, and then we can schedule a Zoom call.
Awesome. And just a reminder, Valeria is not helping you with your design-a-thon projects. But if you do have ideas for the platform she talked about, feel free to reach out. If you do have questions about the design-a-thon, please put those on Slack. We're happy to help you. And again, thank you, Valeria, for joining us today and giving us some background and just sharing a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much.